No one told him this part of America would hurt the most. He expected the accent, the food, the cold. What he wasn't ready for was how invisible he would become the moment he arrived. He still remembers standing in the airport, watching people rush past him like he didn't exist. Everyone was moving fast, talking fast, living fast. And he stood there, holding everything he owned in one suitcase, wondering when someone would finally look at him and see a person. Back home, he was known, respected. He had a name that meant something. In America, he was just another face, another accent, another person trying to figure it out quietly. At first, he told himself this was normal, culture shock, adjustment. That's what everyone says, right? But then something strange started happening. People smiled but didn't listen. They spoke but didn't explain. They corrected him without words. No one yelled, no one insulted him, and yet every day he felt smaller. The hardest part wasn't the work. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the loneliness. It was realizing that America had rules no one ever explains, and you only discover them after you break them. And the day he learned his first invisible rule was the day he realized this country could either shape him or erase him. He told himself it would get better once he found work. That's what everyone said. Once you're busy, you won't feel it anymore. So when he finally got hired, he thought this was the turning point. A small job, nothing glamorous, but it meant progress. On his first morning, he woke up early, too early. He rehearsed his words in the mirror, smiled at himself, practiced sounding confident, normal, American enough. By the time he stepped into the building, his heart was racing, but he was ready, or so he thought. The instructions came fast, too fast. He nodded along, even when he didn't fully understand, because asking questions felt dangerous. Back home, questions meant learning. Here, questions felt like weakness. So he watched instead, copied others, tried not to stand out. And for a moment, it worked, until it didn't. At lunch, he sat quietly, listening to coworkers talk. They laughed, complained, joked about things he didn't understand. Then someone asked him a question, a simple one. He answered, carefully, and the room went quiet. Not hostile, not angry, just uncomfortable. Someone chuckled. Another person corrected him, politely, too politely. That's when he noticed it. The look, that brief pause people make when they decide how much patience you deserve. From that day on, everything felt like a test. How loud to speak, when to smile, when to stop talking. No one told him he was doing anything wrong, but no one told him he was doing anything right either. He started going home exhausted, not from work, but from thinking, replaying conversations, rehearsing sentences for tomorrow, wondering which version of himself was safest to bring. And slowly a quiet fear settled in. Not the fear of failure, the fear of disappearing. Because in America, he was learning something no one had warned him about. You don't lose yourself all at once. You lose yourself in pieces. And he was just beginning to notice what it was costing him. The breaking point didn't come from anger. It came from confusion. One afternoon, his supervisor called him over. Nothing dramatic, no raised voice, just a calm tone. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Those words alone tightened his chest. They stepped aside, away from everyone else. The supervisor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We've noticed something," he said. That sentence hung in the air. Not, "you did something wrong," not, "there's a problem," just something. "You work hard," the supervisor continued. "No one's questioning that." Then came the pause, the dangerous pause. "But your attitude, sometimes it comes across as unfriendly." Unfriendly. The word didn't make sense. He showed up early, stayed late, did exactly what he was told. Back home, that was respect.
Here, apparently, it wasn't enough. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "I didn't mean to—" The supervisor raised a hand. "No need to apologize," he said quickly. "We just want to make sure you're fitting in." Fitting in, that was the real message. Later that day, it happened again. A customer asked him a question. He answered directly, efficiently. The customer frowned. "Are you upset?" she asked. He froze. "No," he said, "I'm just answering." She shook her head slightly. "You don't have to be rude." Rude. That word hit harder than unfriendly, because now it wasn't just work feedback, it was judgment from a stranger. From that moment, everything collapsed inward. He started forcing smiles, laughing when he didn't understand the joke, apologizing even when he hadn't done anything wrong. By the end of the week, he was exhausted, not physically, but emotionally. Then came the email. Short, neutral, polite. "We've decided to move in a different direction." No explanation, no warning, no conversation. Just like that, the job was gone. He sat on his bed, staring at the screen, replaying every interaction. Was it his tone, his face, his accent? Or was it something deeper, something invisible he was never taught? Rent was due, savings were thin, and the confidence he arrived with was now fractured. That night he walked through the city, watching people move effortlessly through a world that rejected him quietly. No insults, no confrontation, just closed doors disguised as politeness. And that's when the realization hit him, sharp and unforgiving. In America, working hard is expected, but knowing how to be is what decides whether you survive, and no one had ever explained how. For days after losing the job, he stayed quiet. Not because he had nothing to say, but because everything inside him felt bruised. Back home, silence meant dignity. Here, silence felt like erasure. He replayed the moments again and again. The feedback.
The looks, the email. At first, anger tried to take over. They didn't understand me. They never gave me a chance. But anger didn't pay rent, and pride didn't explain the rules. So one evening, instead of spiraling, he did something unfamiliar. He asked. Not online, not anonymously. He asked people. A neighbor who had been in America 20 years. A former coworker who spoke gently but honestly. A community volunteer who smiled like she'd heard this story before. And slowly, a pattern emerged. In America, effort is invisible. Emotion is everything. People don't just listen to what you say, they watch how you say it. Your face, your tone, your pauses. Not smiling doesn't mean you're serious, it means you're distant. Directness doesn't mean efficiency, it can sound like anger. Silence doesn't mean respect, it can feel like rejection. No one had told him this, because no one thinks to explain water to a fish. That realization hurt, but it also freed him. For the first time, he stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started asking, "What does this place expect?" That shift changed everything. He began practicing, awkwardly at first, smiling in the mirror, softening his tone, adding unnecessary words like "hey" and "no worries." At first, it felt fake, performative, but then something unexpected happened. People responded. Cashiers lingered, strangers chatted. Doors opened, slowly, cautiously. He wasn't changing who he was learning the language beneath the language. Weeks later, he got another job, different place, same responsibilities. This time, he arrived prepared. He smiled first, spoke slower, checked faces as much as instructions. When confusion came, he didn't retreat, he clarified. When feedback came, he listened, not defensively, but curiously. And this time, it worked. No warnings, no quiet corrections, no sudden emails, just normal days. The kind most people never notice, but immigrants never forget. One afternoon, his manager clapped him on the shoulder and said, "People really like working with you." He nodded, but inside something settled, because he knew the truth. He wasn't suddenly better, he was finally understood. Months later, he caught himself helping someone new, a man standing too quietly, speaking too directly, looking confused by the room. He leaned in and said softly, "Smile a little, they don't know you yet." The man laughed nervously, and in that moment, the cycle continued. The culture shock that once broke him became knowledge he could pass on. That's the part no one talks about. Immigrants don't just adapt, they translate. They carry invisible manuals written in mistakes and offer them to the next person before they fall. If you've ever felt misunderstood in a new place, if you've ever been punished for rules no one explained, if you've ever wondered whether you were the problem, you weren't. You were learning. And learning a country takes more than courage. It takes humility, observation, and forgiveness, especially for yourself. He didn't lose his dream that day. He learned how to protect it. And sometimes that lesson is the real beginning. He didn't become confident overnight. That's the part movies skip. Even after he learned the rules, the fear didn't disappear. It just changed shape. Instead of worrying about being rude, he worried about being too much. Was he smiling too often? Was his voice too soft? Was he trying too hard to fit into a mold that wasn't his? Assimilation, he learned, comes with a quiet cost. You gain access, but you risk losing pieces of yourself if you're not careful. Some days he missed the directness of home, the honesty, the way silence didn't need explanation. In America, everything felt like negotiation. Tone mattered, timing mattered, perception mattered. Even emotions had to be packaged carefully. He noticed how coworkers said, "I'm fine," when they weren't, how people avoided conflict by smiling through discomfort, how frustration hid behind politeness. At first, this felt untruthful. Later, he realized it was survival. America didn't reward truth alone, it rewarded delivery. That understanding didn't make things easier, it made them clearer. He began to see culture shock not as confusion, but as collision. Two value systems crashing quietly inside one person, and every day he had to choose which parts to soften and which parts to protect. One evening, riding the bus home, he overheard two men arguing softly in a language he recognized, his language. He didn't join in, he just listened. Their voices carried frustration about work, about money, about being misunderstood. He felt a strange comfort, not relief, but recognition. He wasn't alone. That night, he wrote something down in his notebook. "This country doesn't hate me. It just doesn't know me yet." That sentence became an anchor. Whenever rejection came, he returned to it, because rejection feels personal, even when it's structural. Over time, he learned to separate the two. He stopped internalizing every cold interaction, stopped assuming every correction meant failure. Instead, he treated America like a language class. You mispronounce words, people correct you, you try again. No shame, just repetition. Months passed. The city that once felt hostile began to feel predictable. Not easy, but readable. He learned which smiles were genuine and which were transactional. He learned when "let's hang out sometime" meant never and when it meant soon. He learned that small talk wasn't pointless, it was a doorway. And once you opened enough doors, you stopped feeling trapped. One day, something unexpected happened. He stopped translating in his head. The pauses disappeared, the calculations faded. He responded naturally, and people responded back, not with curiosity, not with suspicion, with ease. That's when he realized the culture shock was no longer happening to him. It had passed through him and left him changed, but not erased. He still spoke his language at home, still cooked food that smelled of memory, still held values America didn't always understand. The difference was he no longer needed permission to exist as both, immigrant and individual, adapted and authentic. That balance didn't come from perfection, it came from patience. And patience is something immigrants are forced to learn faster than anyone else. Years later, when he thought back to that first job, the warnings, the confusion, the quiet dismissal, he no longer felt bitterness, he felt clarity. That moment hadn't broken him, it had calibrated him.
It showed him the invisible terrain he was walking on, and once you can see the ground beneath your feet, you walk differently, stronger, slower, more aware. If you're watching this and you're still in the early stage, still confused, still embarrassed, still unsure, let this be your reminder. Feeling lost doesn't mean you're failing. It means you've arrived somewhere new. Culture shock isn't proof you don't belong, it's proof you're learning. And learning is uncomfortable by design. No one crosses into a new life unchanged. The goal isn't to blend in perfectly, it's to understand the rules well enough to choose when to follow them and when to bend them.
That's how you survive. That's how you grow. And that's how you build a life that doesn't just function, but feels like yours. He didn't conquer America. He learned how to live inside it without disappearing. And for many immigrants, that is the real victory. He didn't conquer America. He learned how to live inside it without disappearing. And for many immigrants, that is the real victory. If you've ever felt lost in a new place, misunderstood, or unsure if you belong, remember this: you are not failing, you are learning. And every step, every mistake, every quiet lesson brings you closer to the life you want. Be part of this community. Subscribe to Crossing Realities for more real immigrant stories that educate, inspire, and keep you on the edge of your seat. Like this video if it made you think about the challenges of starting over. Comment below. Have you ever faced a rule you didn't know existed? Share your story and let's learn together. Remember, every story here is more than just entertainment. It's a guide, a mirror, and a reminder that you are never alone. And if you want to see what happens next when immigrants face unexpected challenges, click on the next video. Your journey, your lessons, your growth. This is only the beginning.